In this video, we're going to continue with our adjustments. We've already learned how to adjust the opacity based on the mix slider. For the car, to darken it and desaturate it, we're going to actually have to use new nodes that are specifically designed for that type of function. Each node has a function, and some nodes have multiple functions built in. Some of them are very purpose-built and only do one thing. So we're going to learn a number of them. There's hundreds of nodes in Nuke. We're not even going to scratch the surface in regards to what Nuke has available, but there's some common ones that are used over and over again, kind of like I said before. You use 10% of the nodes 90% of the time. We're going to try to look at the most common ones. So I'm just going to move this over a little bit to give myself a little bit of room here to add more nodes. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring in an exposure node. So for that one, I don't think it has a hotkey. If it does, I can't remember it. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go down to color. So color has all of the color correction nodes, and you can see exposure does not have a hotkey by default. Grade and color correct do, but you can see exposure and saturation are both here. I'm going to end up using both of those. So I'm going to manually click on exposure, and notice I've got nothing selected. I'll just do it once. So with nothing selected, your new node will just get added to the grid, or added to the node graph, but it's not connected to anything. I'll delete that one and I'll do it again, but slightly differently. I'm going to select the car first, the car only. That's what I want to change the exposure on. I'm going to right click, and you can see this time the exposure node got generated and attached itself. I'm going to undo that. If you right click in the if I select something and right click in the empty space and just immediately let go, I'll do that again. It'll automatically select the last node generated. So since the last thing I did was create an exposure, just a single right click will automatically do it again. But the biggest thing to pay attention to here, that is, if I right click, go and choose the node that I want, color, exposure, if I have the car only selected, it will automatically attach it. As you can see, it's connected in between the connections it already has. So it's going to go from the car into the exposure into the merge. So and there's an order of operations there, so it's all based on the flow chart, based on these arrows in the direction they're going. So it's going out of the car into the exposure, and then out of the exposure into the merge. So now with that plugged in, I should be able to come up to the exposure settings and make adjustments that should show up here right away. So for example, if I adjust the red, green, and blue sliders, I can make it brighter and darker, which adjusts the exposure, obviously the brightness. I can also set the black point to change where the black kicks in, but for our purposes, that's not really necessary. In this case, the black point, the default, should be fine. The one thing I do want to show you here is gang. If I uncheck that, I can color correct. I can move the red, green, and blue sliders independently and create different balances to change the overall color of the object to a certain extent. So I want to make it look more gold or warm, I can. If I want to make it look more cool, I can do that too. So exposure is really great for overall brightness changes, or color corrections. Now, unfortunately, I can't seem to find a happy medium to make the tires look washed out like they do here without making the car look like it's glowing. So in this situation, I don't think exposure, is the correct or the best choice to make the changes that I need. So I'm going to delete it, and I'm going to try a different one instead. So I'm going to select the car, right click, Forgot to hold it. Right click and hold, and I'm going to choose grade this time. And you can see the hotkey for that one is G. Just going to move this over so we can see it next to it. Now grade is almost like curves in Photoshop in a sense. It gives you a lot more control, and we can change things like the gamma, which will change the gray point of the image, which should allow us to kind of wash things out without brightening it too much. So I'm just going to boost the gamma just a little bit, and at the same time turn the gain down. So gain is overall intensity. I'm going to turn the gain down but boost the gamma, and that should give me that more kind of washed out look. You can also play with offset, although offset, unfortunately, with the default settings, will affect the entire background. We could mask that, and I'll show you how to do that later, but for now, that's not very helpful. Same with lift. White point allows us to adjust where the white values kick in, and black point allows you to adjust where the black values kick in. So right now my best option is to just boost the gamma and reduce the gain. And you see, just in doing that alone, the car starts to feel more part of its environment. Now the color though, I still want to desaturate it because I feel like the blues here are so bright and intense, and back in everywhere else they're kind of washed out. So one node isn't always enough. I'm going to move this over some more. The cool thing about a node-based workflow is that you can daisy chain nodes and have different nodes do different things. So I'm going to select grade, and I'm going to add a new node in between here. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to add a saturation node. Pull that out to the side. So now the grade is already applied, and now I'm going to saturate the image after that, or in this case I'm going to desaturate. So I'm going to come up here to saturation and drag it to the left, and you can see that'll suck the color out, or if I go to the right it'll make it more intense. And I'm just going to desaturate this just a little tiny bit, just so the colors are a little bit more muted. And again, the whole idea and the goal behind this is to make it look more like your 3D object is convincingly living in the universe that we're placing it in. So color correction and the color correction nodes, which we've just looked at 3 of them, exposure, grade, and saturation, are all designed to allow you to make adjustments like that on the fly for each individual layer as needed.